We started trading, made money, then lost it all. And then in order to make it back, we started these website businesses. And that's when we caught the bug.
Put your wife at home to take care of the kids and go to work.
When I have a really challenging situation or everything's going to shit in some way, I'm like, well, this is a really good experience. Every one of these things is going to make me better at my job.
Ayden.
Hey, how's it going?
Let's cut the chase. How did you make your first million and when?
Wow, we're just getting
right away. I had too many coffees today.
The main question, Yeah, so I guess what was the year? It was 2014.
Okay.
August 2014. I forget the exact date.
August. I love it. You know exactly the month.
No, I know the date because it was the day that we sold my last company. So we had a company in the online survey space. Our product was called Fluid Surveys, and we had bootstrapped it to just under 100 people. It was profitable, double-digit millions run rate.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so we sold it to SurveyMonkey, and that was the big payday.
How many partners did you have?
We were 4 co-founders. So myself, Amin, who is my brother, Sam, and Ellie. And so, there's 4 of us.
How much did you sell it for?
So that we haven't publicly announced, but I will say that there are some public numbers out there. What I can say is all of the public numbers are wrong, and it's much higher than whatever is publicly listed.
Why can't you say it?
It's a very good question, but let's just say that one of the co-founders was very sensitive around the topic. And so it's,
Why? He told his wife he sold it for more or what?
No, I mean, I think if anything, he would have downplayed it and said, "Oh no, don't worry, it's not that much."
Oh my god!
But it was one of those.
Ottawa entrepreneurs always surprises me. You sold your company for millions. Just say it. Inspire people.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, of course. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot more than millions. But
and how long? When did you create this business? So you sold it in 2014. How old was it?
Was on the day that we sold it for 6.5 years.
How was this journey? Well, first, how old were you?
Yeah, I was 29 when we sold it. Yeah.
Damn, that's awesome, man. Most of the millionaires that I got here on this podcast so far, they're in their late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
I've always thought first million, it's impossible to get it in your 20s. We've been taught, like 30 years process. So how were you surprised that you became a millionaire at 29, or you've always thought I'm going to do it when I'm in my 20s?
Yeah, just like thinking about it that way to say like I'm going to make this much money or so on and so forth. I just assume that, if we build a business that's going to be valuable, then the money will come. But like that can't be your primary driver. At least that's my point of view. And the reason is if it's your primary driver, it's not statistically the best way to go about it. Like if your primary driver is to make a lot of money, I don't think that entrepreneurship is necessarily the best route. And the reason I say that is probability weighted. I mean, you and I know, right? Lots of businesses fail. They take a very long time. You work like a madman, right? 80 hours a week, killing yourself. 80? Oh yeah.
After you get married, before marriage, you're putting in 100 hours at least.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just brutal. And so I just know there's other careers. I mean, you can become an investment banker, a doctor, a lawyer. Like those are like more guaranteed ways to, like if you're thinking of basically like if money is your main goal, I don't know that entrepreneurship is the route that you should go.
Exactly.
However, if you're really, really passionate about entrepreneurship, building a business, solving a problem, and you build something really meaningful, and your main objective is how can I deliver the most amount of value to the world, then the money will come. That's just like a consequence of you doing a really good job and just optimizing for delivering maximum value to the world. Because if you're not creating value, then you don't deserve to get paid, right? And I think like that's the thing. If you can optimize for value creation, then the other stuff is just secondary.
I can't agree more with you. Of course, you need to focus on the value, and that's how the money will come. But as a university student, as a teenage, weren't you thinking about like, hey, I want to be a rich man one day. I want to be able to help my family, support people. Or you were thinking, oh, I want to create a company and provide so much value.
I think it's a good question. I mean, I can't say that like it wasn't a motivator. I mean, yeah, to some extent you want to not have to worry about money. I think like that's a point. And then like it's a motivator in that sense, but to be very honest with you, I think I was very obsessed with just the idea of building a business.
Nice.
It's just like there's something really cool about it. So I'll tell you a story.
I love stories.
Yeah,
Hit me.
basically, I mean, I'll tell you how this all started, like why tech businesses and so on and so forth. So my brother and I grew up in New York. We're recording this in Ottawa today, but we grew up in New York City.
No, in New York.
So we grew up in New York City. And it was, late 90s. And when you grow up in New York City, your friends, someone has, parents that work in Wall Street. And so like trading stocks is part of the game. And, this is the late 90s, dot-com boom. And so, my brother and I thought that we could too, like trade in the market. So I think I'm maybe 13, he's 9. My dad, who's not on camera, but sitting in the room, he opened up a trading account for us. And so we just started trading. And so we would sit during summer break and trade from day to night, basically sitting behind CNBC, watching it, like figuring out stocks. And like, it was kind of at that moment, like it was cool. We were doing that, for sure to make money. Like that was the goal. And we thought, okay, we could buy our own stuff. We could buy all these cool things as kids. And plus nobody would hire us because we're 13 and my brother was 9. And so we're doing this thing. And so we see all of these, entrepreneurs on TV. There's all these IPOs happening and like people are IPOing and we're like, wow, this is so cool. How do they do that? Oh, they start these tech businesses. And so I think like that was the first time that, we saw them. We're like, when we grow up, we want to do that. So if anything, like that was, when we said, oh, this is how we're going to one day build a tech company and one day it's going to be us on TV and be able to do that. Now, we haven't done that yet, but certainly it's still, part of the dream to be able to.
How much did you start with trading? Like, what was the budget?
Oh, I think we probably started with, under $1,000. Remember, like,
did you guys make or lose?
So here's the thing. We started making a lot of money.
Okay.
And then my dad
took it
saw
away.
this. No, my dad saw this and he's like, wow, these guys are geniuses, right? So then he gave us a whole bunch of money too. And then once he gave us the money, we made a little bit more and then we lost it all, right? So after we lost it all, it was, it's a huge lesson, but also now like we feel really bad, right? Not only did we lose our own money, but we also lost money for, my dad.
What did you learn from this loss, from this failure?
I think, in retrospect, the thing that I learned the most was that we didn't spend a lot of time, in self-pity or anything like that. Because this was a significant, trauma as a child, right? So I think we very quickly turned it around and we're like, how do we make that money back and then some? So that was like the immediate thing that our mind went to. And so then what we started doing was my brother was always, a lot more technical. And so back then he was doing these things like building websites for people. So he was building websites. And then the idea that I had was, whoa, I wonder if we can do this for other people. And if we do, then maybe this can be, we can make money and make back the money we lost and then pay, my dad back and do this sort of thing. So we started doing this but we needed customers. We didn't have customers. So as a, 13-year-old, how do you find customers? And so I had this is a long time ago. Now, this is late 90s. And so I had this idea that I would go to Yahoo chat rooms and there were these like public chat rooms and I would just copy and paste the text. Does anybody need, college students to build them a website? We do it for very cheap. We're not college students, but I figured that sounded
emotionally,
that sounded like something that other people might say yes to. And so I'm doing this all day for hours. This lady from, I forget, somewhere in Middle America says, yeah, I'll do it. What does it cost? And I'm like, I don't know, $200. I just threw out a number. And that was, for us, it's a decent amount of money. And she's like, okay, what's your phone number? I'll call you. And then I said, oh my God, she's going to call us. This is crazy. So, and she's going to know that we're not a college student and this is really bad. And so she calls and then I grab like just a cloth and I put it on phone.
Oh my God.
And I try to thicken my voice and I'm like, yeah, we're in college students and, this is what we're trying to do. And she's like, okay, I'm an artist. I want to build a website. And then she said, well, can I send you some photos? because then you can scan my photos and we can put it on my website. And I said, yeah, we could do that. Normally, we have that in our studio, but right now we're in college dorm rooms. So in order to do this, in addition to the $200, we would need you to purchase a scanner and send that to us too. So anyway, we had her do that. And, the point is that was the first time that we established a business.
How old were you?
Again, like probably 13 or 14.
And your brother is still like under 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
and so, that was the first contract, and we used that to get other ones. And then eventually we thought, oh my God, we're doing all of this business, but the problem is that we're building websites and then we have to do more work, and then it's basically short-term revenue. And so we thought, okay, maybe we should host those websites too. And so we didn't really have any servers, so we just used our home computer. And then the problem with that was that back then it was dial-up, not dial-up, but it was DSL, and so sometimes what would happen is that if you were using the phone, I guess if it was dial-up, that would have been an issue. But sometimes my parents would use the server or the computer, and then once they were done, they would just turn off the computer, and we would have to say, no, don't turn off the computer. That takes down all the websites. We're hosting all these websites on this computer. So yeah, I mean, that was the start. So I think it was like we started trading, made money, then lost it all. And then in order to make it back, we started these website businesses. And that's when we caught the bug. And so it's been a bunch of businesses. I think, yeah, basically my brother and I have been starting businesses and working together for more than 20 years, I think.
Damn, that's crazy. Like, you've been partnering up with your brother for years. Like, what's the secret? I always hear some big damages because brothers are working together and you're partnering up with family members. So how did you guys manage to succeed in this journey?
Yeah, so this is a good question. So definitely in the earlier years, we definitely would have had more arguments, and it took some time for us to figure out how to work together. But we are extremely complementary, and he's definitely more focused on the engineering, the product side, and I've always definitely been focused on the business side. And I think this separation, and over the course of time, I think we've grown to really appreciate what each person does. Mm-hmm. And I think and that's what you end up learning is that really, truly each person is focused on one thing. They're really good at that thing. And together it's just very complementary. And so, to this day, I think my brother is one of the smartest people on the planet. And so the very fact that I get to work with
building
them,
websites at 9 years old,
yeah.
Shit.
And so, I mean, nowadays it's common, but back then you'd have to write HTML code, and so again, things were harder to do back then. But the point is that if you can work with someone who is incredibly talented, incredibly smart, I mean, why wouldn't I want to work with them? And so yeah, we've been doing that for more than 20 years now. Multiple businesses, multiple products, tens of millions of revenue generated, so it's been good.
That's fucking awesome, man. Good job. I would love to meet your brother one day too.
Yeah, he's an interesting personality.
So what did your dad do? Because raising these two geniuses, you must have, had a very tough journey, as a parent, because they learn so much more from watching you, or am I wrong?
Yeah, so I think, I obviously learned a lot from my parents. My dad was an international lawyer. He worked for the United Nations, and my mom was a geneticist, so she worked in a laboratory. My grandpa actually, turns out after, I learned this later on, was that he was probably the first entrepreneur in the family. Yeah, so he had I think a fabric store or something like that. So very traditional retail. And so we did have it in the family.
And that was in New York or back home?
No, this was back home.
Okay, cool. So the Persian carpets.
Exactly.
Nice.
Well, Persian fabrics and that sort of thing.
Cool. And how was your grandpa as an entrepreneur? Do you hear stories? Was he very successful? Was he
Yeah, so... definitely. So I think the way that my parents described it was that, he grew up, like, he was in a village, and I think they had their own vineyard, although, like, not really making wine, just having grapes, and they had a farm. And so one of his goals, my grandpa's goals, was to bring the family to the city, so to move from the village to the city. And so and he started his fabric business, and that's how he did it. And then my dad, obviously going from the city, he moved to New York City, moved to the U.S. and worked for the United Nations there. So my grandpa, told him, "Hey, I took you from the village to the city. Let's see what you're gonna do." So he went from, like, city
to New York
to New York to the United Nations. So when it was our turn, it said, "Listen, like, you came from the village to the city, and now to New York City. Where are you guys going to go from here?"
You went to Ottawa.
Well, we went to Ottawa, but I think it was the point was that you guys are starting from here, and so what can you do on this platform? So I think, like all of us, we have to recognize that everything that we're able to do, we're standing on platforms that our families and, in various ways, we've had the opportunity to be there. And it's true, we've had opportunities. Just being in North America itself, I think is a major opportunity.
I have to ask you this question. How did you end up in Ottawa? What happened? What happened to you? Did they kick you out from New York? What happened?
Oh yeah, no. Honestly, it wasn't a super planned thing. So my dad, obviously, United Nations. He was going to work for the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands, and so there was a time where he was seriously considering moving away from New York to the Netherlands, and so I had family in Canada. And I was just about to go into university, and so it just made sense for me to stay in an English-speaking territory and stay in North America, and I had family in Ottawa.
So you had to come here?
Yeah, basically.
Have you ever considered going back? How did you feel when you moved from New York to Ottawa?
Yeah, so I think my first reaction was we were going to downtown Ottawa. So my family member who lived here took us to downtown Ottawa, and my first reaction was, "Where are all the people? Why is there because
there's no buildings?"
You go to New York, you're practically bumping into someone everywhere you go, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm like, "This is downtown. Where are all the people?" So that was my first reaction. But obviously, been here in Ottawa for more than 20 years. I love it here. I think there's a lot of awesome stuff, and I think remote work just makes it possible that you can live anywhere. And I think Ottawa is an amazing place to raise a family, and you can do almost anything here. And we have, right? So in Ottawa, built businesses, sold businesses, raised tens of millions in venture capital here, done the whole gamut
you did
of
it
whatever.
From Ottawa.
Yeah.
So everyone is using Ottawa as an excuse.
It's a crutch. It's not like, where you live doesn't matter.
Okay. It doesn't matter where you live.
I mean, I think you should optimize for what's personally valuable to you. And I think that, Ottawa, you can live a really great lifestyle in Ottawa.
You started a business from scratch with 4 other founders, or you were 4 in total?
4 in total.
4 in total. 6 years and a half later, you sold it for many millions. Let's call it 50 millions. Let's call it 100 millions. Okay? And that's awesome. Tell me about this 6.5 years journey. Were you single? Were you married? Did you get married after? And was it lonely? Was it hard? Did you struggle to find, money to pay the rent? Tell me about all this.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories there. So, I think what I will start with is that we did have an advantage. I think I had an advantage, which was I didn't have any student debt. So this was definitely an advantage. But yeah, I started my career working at Nortel. So I think when I left Nortel, I had roughly $18,000 in savings. Something
of course,
like
you're Persian.
Yeah. So
you're saving everything you make.
Yeah, exactly. So no debt, and then I also had $18,000 in savings. And so my goal was that I would make the $18,000 last a full year, and then fund the business with it. My 2 co-founders, my brother and Sam, they were working in. They were students at McGill. So my life effectively was I would work throughout the week, at home in my apartment, and I had a roommate. And then, on the weekends, I would drive to Montreal every week and then work with those guys. and then basically go back and do the same thing. And then in the summers, they would come and live with me in our 2-bedroom apartment. And I had a roommate. So basically there was like 1 bedroom and then the living room, and we would all take turns sleeping on the bed.
Oh my God.
Like this is kind of the situation that we were in the beginning. But honestly, we don't look at that stuff as bad times. It was fun times. If anything, we talk about those times and reflect on how positive and how awesome it was. So,
what was the budget to start? Like first day?
I mean, it was just it was
18,000.
It was 18,000.
So you're the only one who funded. All the other co-founders were like what? The technical?
Well, yeah. Amin and Sam were definitely the technical guys, and they were in school. My other co-founder, Ellie, also did put some money a little bit later. But the key is that like we had to figure. So it's basically like you have this lifeline, and you have to make that last, and then at the end of it, you hope that you're going to get to a profitable place. And so, yeah, I do remember like getting very, very close and saying, "Oh my God, our product is nowhere there. We're not going to make. There's no revenue in your site." And, I'm running out of my personal runway. I'm going to have to go and find a job. And so my immediate thought was, okay, maybe I can do like an overnight shift at McDonald's or something. And then during the day I can work on the business. And that was kind of crossing my mind. And then in the last kind of minute, I would say something came up and I didn't end up having to do that. But like we came really close. So, I mean, that was the first parts were really hard.
When did you start making profit? After how long?
I think my, probably, I mean, it depends on what you mean by profit. But I think our first year we made probably like, I would say $25,000, but we started to hire employees and we had to convince the employees to, we couldn't really compete with like, high paying salaries from other places. So these were like very early employees, students that would kind of help us out. And but year one, I'm going to say maybe 25,000, maybe year 2, 125, then $500,000.
And you were paying yourself salaries during this first year, or without the salaries?
So the $18,000 that I was saying, I thought that would last me 1 year. I had to make it last close to 2 years. So it was a lot more rough than I had even imagined. But yeah, after 2 years, I think I made a whopping $24K a year as a salary. I would say that I was an engineer at Nortel. It took me maybe 4 or 5 years to get back to the same salary.
What did you study in school?
Electrical engineering.
Electrical engineering. You got a job in engineering and you're like, fuck it, I want to start my business. And you like go off a big salary and it took you 2 years to start making the same money you were making before.
5 years.
5 years?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Like, were you miserable at your job? Like, you didn't...
No. I had it was great. I learned a lot at Nortel. It was a really good time. And it's just, it just made me appreciate how hard it is to run a business. And so, it took 5 years, but it's, I think when you get there, it's like the best of both worlds. Remember, like we're primed. Since we were teens, we're like, one day we're going to do this thing. And then finally, when we do that, it was just like, I mean, it's a dream come true, right? Because you can have your business and get paid what you would have gotten paid had you worked at your previous job. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. So that was like a big moment. And I have to tell you a story. I have another family member who was who runs a pizza store, and so when I first started the company, he told me, he's like, listen. The way that this is going to work is like it's going to take you 3 years to kind of break even. After 5 years, you will be profitable. You'll make some money. After 7 years, you'll make good money. And so this is what he told me. And I said, listen, come on. I mean, this is pizza business. This is a tech business. We expect to get to like, I don't know, 100 million in sales in 3 years. It's very different. But sure enough, he was right. Almost exactly. It was like 3 years.
So accurate.
5 years we started, same salary. And then, close to 7, we sold the company and so it lined up perfectly.
That's awesome. Did you tell him that he was right?
I haven't. So maybe I'll send him this recording and say, hey, you were right.
You have to. Unless he's arrogant and he's going to remind you every day. I told ya.
Yeah, see, I was right.
You started hiring employees. Tell me about your first experience hiring your first employee, from the interview to the training and being a manager for the first time and then firing them or losing them, if you did lose them.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first ever employee?
Yeah, I mean, I remember all of the. I remember all of the original team. I think, to be honest with you, we were very we built a really strong team and a strong culture. I think. I remember all the original folks. Some of them work with me today at my next company, Fellow. So, for example, Alexandra Sunderland, who is our director of engineering at Fellow. She joined, Fluidware, which was the previous company, as an intern, as a high school intern. And then we've worked together ever since. So high school intern, then did all of her co-ops with us, then joined us full time, went through the acquisition.
Wow.
Worked at SurveyMonkey and then joined Fellow. And, so I think the point in mentioning something like that, and again, there have been others who worked at the previous company and work at Fellow or worked at Fellow for some time. Nate Beecham was another one. And so the point is, if you find really awesome people that you can work really well with, I think it's this is why relationships matter. So again, if you can find a really great team, you have the opportunity potentially to work with those people for a lifetime. Because why not? Because I think the hardest thing is actually finding people who work really well together. And it's very hard to find. So if you ever find that and you find that magic, I think it's important to do what you can to continue with that for as long as possible. But
they also say it's the captain, it's not the soldier. And I'm going to get into this after. I want to ask you, what's your secrets as a good manager? Because if you have these people that stick around for this long, that means you have something you can teach me today. But let's go back to the original topic. Tell me about the first interview that you ran. What were the questions? How did you learn? How did you do the research? And the reason why I'm asking this technical question, because there is someone out there, they want to start a business, they want to hire some employees, and they don't know what to do. So I want you to give some tips. What did you do wrong? What did you learn in interviewing, hiring?
Yeah, so I'll kind of maybe give you the what I know now about hiring. Yeah. So I think the most valuable thing that I have learned is that people who are truly incredible at their craft are just passionate about it in a way that transcends just the job. So for example, you might say that some 21-year-old who comes to interview at your company, you might say, oh, well, they don't have enough experience. They're straight out of school. But if you look at, say, my brother, since the age of 9, or even earlier, he's been programming. So by age 21, this guy has more than 10 years of experience, and arguably a lot more than 10 years because he's nonstop, into the night working. So that level of expertise, and why does he do it? He doesn't he just loves this stuff, right? He just loves the challenge of it. So I think that, looking for people who are very passionate about their craft or their topic, in the world of marketing or in your world, you can probably look for very creative people, right? And you can look for creativity in other aspects of their lives and kind of look for that. So I would say that, looking for ways to know that the craft that this person is working on goes beyond just a job, and it's something that they're truly, truly passionate about. Because again, all you have is the people on your team. And so the best thing that you can do is hire the absolute best people. And that's what a company is all about. So the way you can do that is just finding those passionate people. And then the great thing about passionate people like that is passion is contagious. You're going to feel that, across the board. Everybody kind of brings their A game. And so, that's one thing we always optimize for, is just really diving deep to figure that out. The other thing that we really look for is just initiative. So one of our values at Fellow, for example, and eventually we codified a lot of these things and they've become values at Fellow, but one of our values at Fellow is write the playbook. And so Write the Playbook is all about, acknowledging that there is no defined playbook in advance that you can just follow. And so you basically have to invent things along the way. And so we're looking for people who are good at thriving in uncertain environments so that you don't necessarily have to say, hey, here's a list of 7 things that you need to do. Rather, you can say, here's the outcome. Go figure it out. And then they can actually do that and have that type of initiative. So we look a lot for entrepreneurial people, self-starters, entrepreneurial, like just people who've done things and taken initiative, and they've been able to do that on their own. So, and that, the way that I heard this described, and I think it's pretty awesome, is not the person who joined, the tennis club at school, but the person who started the tennis club at school, right? So those are the kinds of people that we look to hire.
What are your favorite 3 questions that you ask during an interview?
Oh, that's a tricky one because now this is going to be available and people will prep in advance.
It's okay, man. Give away. Give back to the community a little bit. It's okay.
Yeah, sure. So no candidates allowed after this part of the. But yeah, the things that we, so one of my favorite questions is, what's the most entrepreneurial thing that you've done? And people really think back. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a business. It can be anything.
Selling lemonade.
It can be anything, right? Yeah. And so I think like that, again, goes to we want to hire entrepreneurial people. The other question that I like to ask is, what are you most proud of? And then, so there's some easy answers. So people will say, oh, I'm super proud of like university. And I'll say, okay, that's not allowed. And sometimes they'll say,
yeah, people say university. I graduated here.
Exactly. And so we'll say that's not allowed. And then sometimes they'll say, well, what are you most proud of personally and professionally? And then separate those two. So
third question.
Yeah. So the third question is, I like to say, how do other people describe you? And then we'll usually have.
This is a known question, though.
It's a known question. So yeah, this comes from top grading, the top grading methodology a little bit. But the idea is to say, so who is your manager? Who's someone that you worked with? And they'll say so and so, and then you do want to check the reference afterwards. But you'll say that, for example, let's say, okay, JC was your manager. If I call JC afterwards, and I will, I want to see how closely what JC says is going to match what you're saying. How would JC describe you? And then that kind of forces someone to really think from their perspective, like how they are perceived, tells us how self-aware they are. And then, of course, we'll do the check afterwards to see how well this lines up. And that's usually, a really, really good indication of the words that they use are the words that are going to describe them. And then one final thing I'll say is like, this is a really important one that I've learned, is that more often than not, people try and hire for lack of weakness. And so, in other words, they'll like look at a spectrum of things and they'll say, okay, well, if someone's weak in that area, they won't hire them, or that'll be a blemish, for them to consider. You shouldn't do that. What you should actually do is figure out what is the most important trait of this role and hire for like strength in that position. Because, you're never going to have someone who's amazing at all those things, and don't let the weaknesses take away from the strengths, because not all strengths and weaknesses are equal. So you have to ask, for this particular role, what strength is the most important one, and like optimize for that.
I love it. So you have this position is open, figure out what is the strength that you need for this position, and then look for it in someone.
Yeah.
If they're weak at other stuff, that's okay, but I need you for exactly this.
Exactly.
thing.
And so the reason this is also important is again, so as a manager, your job is to then find other people that are going to be strong in the areas that person is weak. And that's how you make a team, like that's how a team becomes strong. Right? But if everybody is really, really strong in a particular area and the weaknesses are made up because of the team, now you've got a really, really awesome.
What is your favorite answers for these 3 questions? Like, give me one favorite answer for each one. We'll start by what would your manager or people say about you? What do you want to hear?
Yeah. So for this one, I want to hear different things for different roles. So again,
I'm not gonna let you give me this answer. You have to give me something.
Yeah. So okay, I mean, we're gonna have to choose
Let's
a role.
role play. Let's
Okay.
role play. For
So
what
right now,
position do you need?
sure. Right now, I'm hiring for a chief of staff as an example.
Okay.
So, how would your manager describe you? I would look for someone who takes a lot of initiative, someone who is really hardworking, and then if they say really hardworking, then I'm going to question that. Like, define hardworking. Everybody thinks they're hardworking. Like, tell me why you think.
How many hours a week is hardworking?
Yeah. What do you consider? Yeah. What do you consider as hardworking? Like, explain to me.
What do you consider as
what that
hardworking?
means? Again, like I think that this answer depends, right? And so
This doesn't answer depends. Hardworking. What is hardworking? How many hours a
yeah,
week?
so I think the reason I say it depends is because it depends on your family circumstances, right? So as you know, if you have 4 kids, you have different circumstances, and you're not going to be able to answer
put your
that.
wife at home to take care of the kids and go to work.
I mean, that's I think circumstances.
Your dad
matter.
is laughing. He's like, what?
I think there's circumstances, right? So what I would say is that look, if you're if what I do believe is that like if you're in your 20s, you should consider work slightly differently in that work is not just work, it's also a learning opportunity. This is one of the things I
love what you said. Work is not just work to pay the bills, you're learning.
Yeah, this was one of the things. So I don't wear my iron ring, but in Canada, when you're an engineer, you get this iron ring. And I remember in my iron ring ceremony, there was Richard Labbe. He was the founder of MedEng Systems. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Hurt Locker. They wear these bomb suits that they manufacture. And so he's a famous entrepreneur in Ottawa. You should also have him on the podcast. And so he came in during that ceremony and he said, my best advice to you is that you guys are young. The first 40 hours in your week, consider that for your employer. The next 40 hours that you do is all for you, right? Because at the end of the day, there's like the 10,000 hour rule. And so the 10,000 hour rule is really like, why not get those 10,000 hours faster? Like the more hours you spend doing something to master your craft, like this is a benefit for you.
So people don't know what's the 10,000 hours rule. Can you?
Yeah. So again, and this myth has been busted a little bit, but the idea is that to get to mastery, you need to be 10,000 purposeful hours doing any particular task. So to me, like one of the things that you asked me, Ayden, what is your goal, in the future for, the decades ahead? I want to be a world-class CEO. Like that's what I want to do. And so for me, every hour that I spend on the business, yes, it has all, all these goals, but on a very personal level, like when I have, a really challenging situation or everything's going to shit in some way, I'm like, well, this is a really good experience because like this is like every one of these things is going to make me better at my job so that in 30 or 40 years from now, I can look back and, these are the experiences that made me like that end outcome of a person that I want to be. Sure. So, and it's really nice to have that kind of a goal too, because it's more of an internal goal and you're not necessarily worried about like the external things. I think it's very dangerous only to look at like external metrics, like looking at revenue and all these things, because again, all businesses have cycles. And so if you're only worried about that and let that be your main driver, it's not as motivating as like the internal driver of like, my goal is to be like world-class at the function that I do.
That's awesome.